Welcome to The Modern Mixed. I'm your host, Emily Bowie. Thanks so much for joining me today. This is episode 3, and we are talking about audio school. And I'm going to tell you, I got a lot to say about it. So the whole debate of audio school gets brought up a lot in the mixing, mastering, any sort of audio engineering topics and communities, and whether or not you should go. And I'm just going to say right now that I know there's a lot of opinions on this, but I'm going to be sharing my personal experience with audio school. And I just want to kind of get out of the way that obviously this is something that is going to be, based on whether you want to go or not. But if you are looking at the pros and the cons, and we'll get all over that, then this is the episode that you're going to want to listen to. So right off the bat, I want to say that if you have the money, and if it is a great audio school, if it's got everything that you need and you've already done your research, by all means, fantastic. Go, learn a lot, study hard, and, you'll probably have some benefits from that. But I'm going to bring it back just a little bit here and tell you about my experience, my story in audio school. Now, this is quite some years ago that I decided I wanted to go into the music industry. I wanted to go into the production part of it. And more specifically, I wanted to go into the engineering part of that. Now, I guess I will show my age just a little bit here, but I graduated in the year 2000. That's right, leaders of the new millennial. That was what it said on my class ring. But, so, I'm from outside of Nashville. I won't say exactly where, but born and raised Tennessee. So I knew of a couple of schools. One, you had Belmont University. It's a private school, very expensive, in Nashville. And then you had, at the time, I believe, the largest state school in Tennessee, which was MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University. And they had a program. They had a recording industry program in their mass communications area. And I just thought it was fantastic. I kind of knew the Belmont thing wasn't going to work out. But the Belmont I felt like back then it was a little more focused on the music business area. And as I'm doing my research, I kind of started liking the business side of it as well. It's always been interesting to me. Very fascinating, kind of very intertwining. But MTSU was probably going to be a little bit more affordable to go to, so that's where I kind of set my sights on. Of course, also, I was an athlete, and quite a good one, and I couldn't give up my sport. I played softball, and I really wanted to play in college. I just wasn't ready to give that up quite yet. I had dedicated a huge part of my life to it, just as I have music. But it was something that I knew I could play in college because I had people looking at me. And it just wasn't quite ready to give that up. And of course, you're 18 years old. You're not really thinking about a career. There's no career in softball. But it's a passion, and you just didn't want to give it up quite yet. It's a huge accomplishment to go play college ball. And so I found out that MTSU did not have a softball team. They were to later get one. But like I said, this was quite some time ago. And so I put those kind of college degree dreams on hold, and I went and played ball for a different school. And after a couple of years, I kind of started to regret it. However, while I was at the school that I attended to play ball, I was taking business classes because I knew that if I wanted to do the music business, that I would need to take some of those business classes anyways. So I was still kind of preparing to either transfer or to graduate and then go a couple more years at a school that offered that program. Get all your core classes out of the way. Hell, looking back on it, I probably would have just gone to a JUCO, because if you're going to go to college and you don't quite know what you want to do yet, or that program's not available, that's exactly what you should do. But anyways, one of the reasons that I actually chose the school that I chose to go play ball at is because I told them, it's kind of up in the air. I either play ball or I go and do what I want to do in music business. And they kept telling me that they were going to get a music business program at the school that I went to. And they eventually did. That is part of the story, but we will go chronologically here. And so did that, then decided after my sophomore year that the softball love was dying, and I had to go fulfill my dreams and major in audio engineering at MTSU. And at MTSU, they make you pick, right? You either pick the music business side or you pick the audio engineering side. And that was kind of hard too, because I wanted to you do all of it, right? They offer a lot of classes. And so if you wanted to do both, you'd be there for the long haul. And so it was a little weird. I went up there, I had all my transfer credits. I even went and took a extra class the summer after my sophomore year at my smaller college, because you needed a full year of history to go to a state school, and I did all that. And then I get there, I'm at orientation, I'm picking my classes, and none of them would let me pick those classes. And I couldn't understand why, so I had to go and talk to an advisor, and they said that you can't take any of those classes. You have to take your 100 level classes, which are like your freshman and sophomore classes. I was registering in as a junior. And the reason that I couldn't take those classes, or that they wouldn't allow me to pick them, is because the classes that were coming from my small private liberal arts college where I played ball didn't transfer to the 4-year state school. And that was a huge blow. So basically, they told me that I would have to take all of my English, all of my physical science and biology, all of my history, except for the one that I took, the semester that I took in a junior college that summer. None of that transferred. And it was super disappointing. I was basically heartbroken over it. And so I had to go back. I even told my coach what happened, asked if I could come back and play ball and have my scholarship. And they said yes. And so I came back and I finished out and graduated from the small liberal arts college, played 4-year ball, and just felt kind of lost after that. I felt like I needed to go and get that degree, that I had made a huge mistake because I had nothing to show for it. And this is a time before YouTube, really. It was a few years before that. You couldn't really learn anything. There were no studios around where I was. I was in more or less, a West Tennessee area. You had Memphis, but they weren't really doing anything back then. There was a couple of them. There was a couple of studios, but they were really small unless you were going to the old Sam Phillips recording studio. Not Sun Studio. That was not what I'm talking about. But even then, you had Ardent. But they were kind of like a close-knit thing. They weren't really taking like outside people, letting internships go there. And so I just felt like I didn't know what to do. I would get some books to read. Wasn't really aware of Pro Tools at the time, that you could do your home studio. It was a little bit before that kind of took off. It was out there, but it wasn't great, and I didn't have a way to learn it. And so fast forward a couple of years, my old school said that they finally got that music business and production program that they kept telling me they were getting the next year. No, the next year. No, the next year. They finally got it. It was 2 years after I graduated. I was still in town. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to give them a call, because I knew all of my classes. It was the same school, so all of my classes were there. I would probably only have to go for a couple of semesters and I could have that degree. So I call them up and I ask them about the program. And, it was just one disappointment after another because the classes that they were telling me that I would have to take was a basic marketing, a business writing class, all these business classes, economics. And then the music part of it, they wanted me to pick an instrument. You would take guitar, you would take piano, you would take violin, harp, choir. So I asked them, I said, so your music business program is just straight up business classes and straight up music classes. Where's the recording? Where's this stuff? And they were like, oh, we have a couple of electives for that. But there was no studio. There was no recording equipment. This was a joke. This was like a brick room, concrete room that had like a Pro Tools 3 rig in it. I mean, that was another disappointment, another door closed. So after that is when YouTube kind of came along and I started to watch as many videos as I could. I was watching these videos. I remember there was a couple of guys, I don't even remember what their channel was, but they were talking about Pro Tools, and it was very early Pro Tools, very early. And they had like a little rig and a little inbox with it. And I just watched them. They had like, their little PA system that they would record through. And then they would take that out and then go in like a 2-track into their little 2-input inbox. And that's what they would record. And I would just watch that. I didn't have any gear at the time. I was just watching. I was just soaking in all the information. I was like, oh, okay, Pro Tools. Like, that's something I need to look into. And a couple of years before that, I had gotten something called Sony Acid. It was like some recording software that Sony was putting out. And honestly, I think it eventually turned into Ableton because that's exactly what it looked like. But it came with some loops. And so I was kind of playing around with that. I had like this little digital guitar pedal thing that you could add drums to. And you could use that almost as an interface. But so, I'm just kind of picking up pieces along the way, learning, educating myself. And finally, the University of Memphis bought my old school. That's right. This old school, I don't even say the name because it's embarrassing now. But they went bankrupt, basically. Really bad administration and everything. So the University of Memphis bought it, and they were like, we're gonna actually turn that music business program into something, and we're gonna call it Entertainment Music Industry. And the Entertainment Music Industry program is going to be exactly what we say it is. It's going to be, all these programs. You're going to have music production. You're going to learn mixing. You're going to learn mastering. You're going to learn how to record, how to record the songs that they're writing in the songwriting class. Wow, that sounds really cool. That sounds exactly how they described the program at MTSU. And so I was like, it's meant to be. This is what I'm going to do. And I went and tried to meet with the one and only teacher for the program. There was one teacher, which was also the advisor for this program. And I kind of knew them around town a little bit. I knew that they were involved in music. They were always at open mic, at the bar, And so I met with them, and they were telling me, oh, yeah, we're going to be recording and mixing. And I've got the studio put together on campus, and you're going to have an internship. Because believe it or not, you're not going to get an internship, at least at any commercial studio in Tennessee, at least. Because they're all in Nashville. There's a handful in Memphis, but they're not going to take you as an intern unless you are going for college credit and they're working with a university. It's just not going to happen. I promise. They're not going to hire you. for just a straight out intern. You have to be there collecting college credit. So I was like, wow, that's my in. So that's my in to these internships into these studios because I'll be a full-time student. And I was promised that. I remember it clear as day. This advisor telling me all the connections they had in Nashville, who they all knew. And I was like, wow, that's really good. You know, I should have known better, though, at that point. Because I'm like, what are you doing in this little town that's actually has nothing to do with music anymore? We'll get to that. So I go up there and I register for my classes. I register for student loans. And I'm enrolled as a full-time student for the entertainment music industry program. And I go for 2 years. All I needed was 2 years because I had went to that other school that the University of Memphis had bought and turned it into their own smaller campus. All of my classes transferred, so I only had to go for 4 semesters. It was 2 years. And first semester was pretty cool. I was learning some things, took music theory. That was very interesting. I feel like I have benefited from that. Took 2 semesters of that. Very hard. It was really kind of hard for me, but you know, I studied. It was stuff that came fairly natural. I wanted to learn it. Made the dean's list, all that great stuff that you aspire to do in college. But then about the end of my 3rd semester, so right before the last semester that I had, I was, waiting to talk about my internship. And I was real excited about it. And we had a meeting about it. And I was, I had been told, like, we're going to work with some of the studios in Nashville. Wow, mind blown, like my heart, full. And then this guy, my advisor, my only teacher, right? The only guy that taught any of the music entertainment classes, asked me, because I had a friend who worked at one of the local radio stations, asked me if my friend who worked at the radio station could get me an internship there. And I laughed. I said, why would I do that? This is the music business program. This is entertainment music industry program. We're supposed to be in studios. If I wanted to go into radio, I would have gone into advertisement because radio is not the music business. I don't care what anyone says, what anyone claims it is. Radio is the advertisement business. It's how it makes its money. And so at that point, I was like, this guy is a total fraud. He's been telling me and other students about internships in actual studios in Nashville. And it was just fake. It was just lies. There was this studio that had just been built in the town, the local where I was going to school. And he was finally like, all right, I can get you into this place. I'm like, wow, you really are a fraud. You really don't have any connections. Like that's sad. And that is something that, I learned, and I don't trust a lot of people now when they start talking a little bit bigger than what you think they are. So there was this recording studio down the street that hardly anybody knew about, hardly anybody recorded at. I even felt sorry for the guy, the main engineer, who they brought from Nashville to work that studio, because nobody was ever there. This is a town just west of the Tennessee River. Like no one's recording there, or no one's going to pay money to come down there. The place stayed, afloat because, one of the elitist of the town had it as a little side project. He just wanted to own it. Didn't know anything about music. Didn't even know how to turn on the console, but hired a guy to come down from Nashville to run it. And that poor guy, he was miserable there. I think he eventually left, and that studio's like closed now. because nobody was ever there to record. But that was where I interned. I interned there and basically would just get a call if somebody had come down to record. It was mostly local people that you've heard of for over a decade at the time. They just did it. It was just their hobby to come in there and make a record. There was no like promotions behind any of the albums that were made there, any of the songs. Just something to go play around with. They did have a pretty nice board, a Trident B. Kind of a standard, I don't know, 80s, 90s Nashville thing. Some pretty decent mics, but hardly ever used. And that was super disappointing. I stayed there through the summer, even after I graduated. Oh, and then when I went in to talk to my advisor after graduation, like, hey man, like you said all this stuff. Like you're supposed to be my advisor too, like helping me write letters and recommendations to places that I can go apply to. But it didn't matter because none of those places would have known who this person was. And I'll never forget this. And I kept this card. He gave me an index card. He wrote down on this index card, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and Sound Exchange. That's what he wrote down. He hand wrote down those companies. It said, try these. And that was it. And I looked at that and I thought, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Not only am I $30,000 in debt for going back to this school, you have committed fraud in convincing me to take this program, to enroll in this program because you had all these connections and that it was a guaranteed thing. Oh, 100% of our people go on to do blah, blah, blah. Those are lies. All of them were lies. And to be honest with you, I don't even know a single person. There's not a single person that's since in that program that's graduated that has had any sort of success in Nashville. I'm sorry that they haven't. They've stuck around that same town and do local stuff. They run the soundboard at the new local place that's only open 2 days a week, and it may have a live act, I don't know, once a quarter. That town's dying anyways. They have a horrible local government. But gave me that card with 4 names of 3 of them were performing rights organizations. The other ones, Sound Exchange, like for your master recordings. Even though the program was my niche, my sort of area in that was the production side of it. Oh, and here's another thing. The whole reason that I found out about the recording revolution was because my teacher said, we don't have a book for this class, but here, and wrote down the recording revolutions, like learn the videos, learn the things on this video. Which, by the way, I'm going to say it. That is one, if you had watched I don't know how they are now because somebody else runs it, but those videos, half of them are like the worst advice in mixing and mastering that you could possibly like come across. And I don't know if it was just because of the limited resources that Graham had, or that he just really, really believed in the whole, I can do everything with Pro Tools stock plugins in my inbox. Like, that's not true. You can maybe get by on, like, if you're just trying to, like, say, hey, friend, I made this. Like, why don't you keep a copy? Maybe. But if you're actually trying to, like, create something commercial, no, that shit's so bad. It may be better now, but back then it wasn't. Not at all. Horrible advice. And then made us download this app called Mix Buddy. Oh my God. Like, ugh. So you're going to know how I feel about audio school just because I did have a horrible experience with mine. Like, I can't even imagine like somebody else doing that. And I saw them and there were other students in there. Not a single one that I graduated with is doing anything in music right now. That is a fact. Nobody that I graduated with is doing anything in music right now. And it's sad. The biggest advice that I have about audio school is, like I said, if you have the money and that's exactly what you want to do, awesome, go for it. That's your desire, fulfill that desire. Also, make sure that you know where you're going. Now, if there would have been Blackbird, there was Blackbird Academy back then. That thing came along a year after I finished the program with my second degree. If I would have known about that program first, I would have just done that. And I don't even care how long it would have taken me to pay that off. I think it's around the same price. Maybe it's not even because you only go for 6 months. And then they have the studio side, or you can go the live route. And they're setting you up on tours, man. Like if you want the opportunity to have a career after you go to that program, you'll have one. It's all about, how far you want to take it. I've been to that studio and I've sat in on a class because I took a short 3-day internship there. That was just an opportunity that came along and took it. It was just you gotta grab these little opportunities along the way. But audio school, it's just not one that I say you have to grab. But things like that, and I'm sure there's some people listening right now that have had wonderful experiences going to audio school. You learned a lot. Your teacher was the mix engineer on, Prince's When Doves Cry, which I've actually met him at Blackbird. But I want to go over some of the pros because I don't want this to just be a complete negative episode. I want to go over some of the pros that I feel audio school does offer. One, the internships at a commercial studio, because none of them in Nashville, I know for a fact, will hire an internship, especially the ones that are putting out commercial records. I'm talking like labels or artists that have budgets from labels and stuff, the majority of the ones around here. You may find somebody that will be like, yeah, you can work in my basement studio for free and we'll call it an internship. But these internships, we're supposed to be able to use that and to use the name of that studio, to use the name of that head engineer to further ourselves into a paying career. And I don't know if the basement route's gonna put you there. But internships, the number one benefit and pro for going to an audio school. Number 2, you get to learn from industry professionals, hopefully. And that's something that you can always look for on a website. If the program has its own kind of page or site, and it can tell you who the instructors are and who you're going to be learning from. The one person that was teaching us things has no credentials. There's no mixing, mastering credits besides their own in their office studio, right? There's no experience. Another pro is hands-on experience. You get hands-on experience. Did I get any hands-on experience? Let's see. One time we set up a drum kit. We mic'd it. Other than that, hitting the number 3 on your keyboard to record, that was about the extent of the hands-on experience at my program. In-house resources is another pro. You've got all the gear, right? You can learn about all that hardware gear. You can learn about all the plugins because they're going to have all of them. Like I said, we had stock stuff. We had stock plugins. That was it. And as far as outboard gear, oh man, there may have been a distressor. I think there was one one piece of analog gear that was like a compressor, and I'm pretty sure it was a distressor. I think that was about it. um, yeah. And then there was like that, that rack. I guess that was how he got Pro Tools. That 11 rack, the orange one. Yeah. Real state of the art. Another pro, you're getting actual experience in the day-to-day studio life. How studios ran. Because there's a lot of other things that go on besides, talking to the artist and saying, hey, you ready to record? There's a lot of stuff that goes on. A lot of studio, maintenance and just the day-to-day structure of that. You're booking, you got to learn how to book clients, routing, asking them what they need from you. And then just knowing how to engineer, knowing how to mic up something, knowing how to be innovative with that stuff. Because a lot of times the artists, they're turning to you. They're going to be like, well, what do you think? How do you think I should plug this up, my guitar? How do you think I should mic this up? How do you think I should record this piano part? Do you think this work? Just a lot of that. That's why it's called engineering. Learned none of that stuff. Learned all that on my own. Books, researching, talking to people, message boards. Studio etiquette. That's I'm a little, a lot of people are very anal about that. Making sure you have to, put your cables up a certain way. I'm like, what if it looks, I just go with how it goes. Circle, that's good. Let's go with me. So those are some of the biggest pros, I would say, for audio school. In the cons, hella expensive. It's not cheap to do that at all. That's why I always encourage people, like, if this is something you want to do and you kind of want to like learn yourself and be able to bring that home studio environment to life, get the courses. You find people who you like, who you trust, who is giving you solid advice. Like your girl, Emily here. Get those courses, get those templates, because those people actually care. One of the main reasons that I'm doing this and I'm going this sort of educational, this home studio educator route, at least parallel to my own mixing and mastering services, is because I don't want people to go through what I had gone through. That I felt like I was snowed, like I was just conned into going, and I was naive. I didn't know better. I just thought that was what you did because that's kind of what we're just taught, right? If you want to learn how to do something, then that's what you major in. You go to college. Times have changed a lot now. I don't think that colleges are looked at in that light, or just not that bright a light. Oh, man. So if you do, you got to make sure that they have reputable educators with some background and credit. You have to. They've got to have industry connections. If that's where you want to go, if this is what you want to do as a career, there's a couple of different avenues. Like I said, I'm doing this, but I have a steady clientele. I've built that up. I do my mixing and mastering services, and then I do the education. Another con is that there's no guarantee that you'll have a job after finishing. Like, I've talked up Blackbird. It's great. I think there's a waiting list now, though. But there's still not 100% guarantee that you're going to have a career that's mirrored off of the program that you just completed. You may be going in to just file papers at ASCAP. No, you'd probably be doing something a little better than that, but it's a possibility because there's no guarantees. Another con is that there's a lot of competition. So that kind of goes with not guaranteeing a spot, because you're competing with everybody else that was in the program, because you're all finishing at the same time. You don't have freshmen, sophomore, or juniors behind you. Like, everybody's finishing at the same time. Another reason that there might be a con to taking, or going away to a school, there's not very many good ones. And so you might have to relocate. So that's also another con. That gets expensive. That's on top of the tuition or however much the program fee is. Gets very expensive, especially if you have to relocate. And I don't know. If I had to do it all over again, obviously I would definitely try to do the Blackbird thing, because I feel like I would want to work in a commercial studio. I've been in a couple of them. I've got to intern sporadically at them, right? When I had to pay to be the intern, right? I had to pay to be an intern. So that's another thing. There's a lot of other options, besides doing that. I think you can make a career. I mean, I'm doing it right now. I wish I wouldn't have had to spend the money and the time, because that was a good decade. That was a good decade of waiting that I lost, that I feel like I could have been in the mix, so to speak. But here we are. You can't change the past. I can only offer you my experience and how I feel about it, just from those experiences. But, if it's something that you've always wanted to do, then you should definitely do it. If you're in a music town that's going to offer these internships and a little bit more of a guarantee, at least in connecting the dots. Now, you still have to work hard when you get to each of those dots, but at least they're there and they're visible. So that is my story on how I've kind of gotten here and my thoughts on audio school. So take it however you want it. I hope that it has been beneficial to you and, maybe kind of guide you a little bit if that's what you want to do, if you were kind of on the fence about it. But if it's not, the good news is that there's tons of stuff out there that you can educate yourself with. And the home studio equipment, is just a million times better than what it was when I first got my first inbox and that little Digitrack guitar pedal thing that I used as an interface. Oh my God. This Apollo over here sounds just as good as the things that I heard coming out of Blackbird. I'm not lying about that. They know that's true. They have these things themselves. But anyways, hope that was helpful for you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me them. Emily@fairairmusic.com. I will answer all of them. I'll answer them here on the air. Once these things start getting out there and people start listening to them, then you'll be able to write those questions in and we'll answer them, in the next episodes. But I want to thank you all for listening and keep on making music, because the more good music that you put out there, the more value we bring back to it. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for listening. I'll catch you in the next one. This has been episode 3 of The Modern Mix.